Omega will start off by casting Program Loop. This will apply Looper to every player with various durations. Each player will also get a number corresponding to how early their Looper debuff will fall off, 1 being first. If Looper isn't cleansed properly, it will confuse the player and send you to your death. Omega will then spawn 2 towers and 2 tethers that will pass to any player intercepting it. The towers will always be close to a cardinal, but never exactly beside each other. The towers will need to be soaked by players carrying Looper, and will in turn cleanse Looper from the player. Taking a tower will also give you a stack of Twice Come Ruin, which will kill you if you receive another stack. The tether, on the other hand, will detonate around the carrier in a large AoE, giving everyone it hits a max HP reduction as well as a stack of Twice Come Ruin. Both of these mechanics will repeat 4 times. To deal with this, the third in line will take the first tethers and take them to the towerless cardinal each, while the first in line soak their towers. Then, fourth in line will grab the second set of tethers, while the second in line soaks towers. First in line will take tethers, while third in line soak towers. And finally, second in line will deal with the tethers as the fourth in line will do their towers. To figure out who goes where, we will be using a prio system where any given pair of players will take either the first mechanic clockwise from 4 or counterclockwise from 4. The first player in the prio list takes the first tower, tether, or tether spot clockwise from 4, and the lower of the two takes the counterclockwise one. The list goes as follows: Melee 1, Melee 2, Tank 1, Tank 2, Range 1, Range 2, Healer 1, and Healer 2. There might be some spot healing required here, as people can get separated from the healers. Once the mechanics have resolved, turn Omega to face north and get ready for Panto Crater. In this mechanic, everyone will be dealt 2 timed debuffs. 1, a small AoE that knocks any other player into the wall, and a line AoE that needs to be shared by 2 other people. Both of these apply a magic vulnerability. Each player will also be dealt a numbered debuff tied to the AoE that needs to be taken out of the party. The way the debuffs are staggered makes it so that the third in line stack will go out first, then fourth in line, followed by first in line, and finally second in line. While this is going on, Omega will start shooting out flamethrower cones towards 2 opposite directions and rotate them in a random direction. Every player will also be targeted for small AoE puddles that you simply dodge. The way we deal with this is by having Group 1 go north and Group 2 go south. If the flamethrower's edges are touching respective cardinals, just take a step into the closest safe zone. If they are directly on the cardinals, rotate clockwise. Now, if there are duplicates of the same number in your light party, players will have to adjust over to the other side. The priority is highest prio moving first. Tank, melee, ranged, then healer. Both parties will start out in the center to catch mitigation. Then every player but the first in line will move out to the edge of the hitbox to meet the incoming flamethrowers. The first in line will move to the other direction, chasing the flamethrowers. The first spreads and stacks will go off, and first in line will return to the party at the edge of the arena, as to not drop their puddle in front of the party's path. Second in line will now leave the light parties under Omega, and out the other side to drop their AoE, as the second stacks resolve. This dance continues for third in line and fourth in line, as the parties continue dropping their AoEs along the hitbox of the boss. When all is said and done, Omega will select 3 random DPS or healers for line AoEs that cannot be overlapped. Omega will also select the 2 farthest targets for massive multi-hit cone tank busters. To resolve this, Have the DPS spread along the south side of the boss, inside the hitbox, and the tanks standing north, outside of the hitbox, to bait the busters with their invulns. After the first line AoEs resolve, the 3 players who didn't get hit will be targeted by a second set. This is followed by the Doom Roomba Enraging. It is advised to hold 2-minute buffs for the start of the next phase, but you are able to safely use a melee Limit Break 1 if you are short on damage during the Enrage cast.
Omega M and F will spawn in the middle and cast Firewall. This will apply Packet Filter M to the 4 players closest to Omega F, and Packet Filter F to the 4 closest players to Omega M. These debuffs will prevent the players from dealing damage to the Omega with the gender corresponding to their debuff. They will then select the main threat of either one for Solar Ray, an AoE tank buster. A few autos will go out before they cast Party Synergy and disappear. Both parties will line up from north to south, and random tether pairs will be assigned. The tether is accompanied by either Far Glitch, which amplifies the damage you take if you're not far away enough from your partner, or Mid Glitch, which does the same if you're too close or too far away. Each pair also comes with a PlayStation symbol, and we want to make sure one of each symbol is on each side. If you see a duplicate north of you, you move over. The mechanic starts off with 2 Omega F clones and 2 Omega M clones appearing. We just want to pay attention to the Omega M and Omega F that are lined up. The one in the middle and the one that is not part of the 3 clone lineup are both fake and don't do anything. The 2 clones that are real will both execute AoEs based on the weapons they have. A male with a shield is a donut AoE. A male with just a sword is a point blank AoE. A female with a staff is a cross AoE. And a female with blade legs will cleave both her sides with a small safe zone inside. After the AoEs, you need to find the eye outside the arena. This will be the new north for the next part. The eye will blast the middle of the arena with a line AoE, as well as small AoEs that apply magic vulnerabilities will be launched at all players. If it is mid-glitch, both adjusted light parties will line up from north to south along the waymarks with Group 1 west and Group 2 east. The order is cross, square, circle, and triangle. If it is Far Glitch, you line up at the wall instead with the light parties. The east side, however, will flip the order to stretch the tethers even more. Once the AoEs resolve, 2 random players will receive stack markers. If there are 2 stack markers on the same side, the southmost player along with their tethered partner swap groups. For the final part of this mechanic, 5 male clones as well as a female clone will appear. We will use the 3 males lined up beside each other as north. The males will prepare point-blank AoEs forming safe zones west, south, and east. The female will prepare a knockback from the center of the arena. Group 1 will get knocked back to the west safe zone, and Group 2 will get knocked to south if it is mid-glitch, or east if it is Far Glitch. After the mechanic, Omega M and F will become targetable again, with their health and aggro swapped. They will auto a few times before casting Limitless Synergy. Both of them will become vulnerable to every player again, before assuming new positions. F will be invulnerable until M has been slain, and 3 male clones as well as 2 female clones will appear outside the arena. A female and a male clone opposite one another will throw out orange tethers that blast the targets for massive cone tank busters. These two are never directly east or west, so you can easily assign each tank to one side of the arena. Additionally, one male clone will target a random player for a line AoE. To solve this, the party stacks on the south side of the middle male's hitbox and gets ready to dodge. Both tanks will take their respective tethers and face them clockwise along the wall to allow a narrow safe zone for the party. The rest of the party will dodge the baited line AoE along the hitbox to make sure they dodge both the busters and the line when they resolve. The leftover male will have spawned a shield and will prepare to use Beyond Defense. This will target one of the 2 closest targets for an AoE that knocks any other target back and applies a vulnerability and twice come ruin. The male will then follow up with a stack AoE on the closest target that also applies twice come ruin. The leftover female will also apply flares on 3 random players. This is simply an AoE that deals proximity damage. The 2 tanks will bait Beyond Defense, and everyone else including the flares will stack in the middle. The tank that got Beyond Defense will rotate around the group, and the tank that did not will join the party in the middle for the stack. Stacking the flares here will require a hefty amount of mitigation. After this mechanic has resolved, the eye outside the arena will cast Cosmo Memory, a raid-wide that deals massive damage. After that, you will simply just kill the male and then the female.
Phase 3 will start with a transition sequence. The group will line up and prepare for some debuffs. 4 people will get purple spread debuffs, and 2 people will be selected for white stack markers. The remaining 2 players will get nothing. The purple spreads will take a step back towards the south wall, the stacks will start moving north, and the people of nothing will jump to signal that they do not have a debuff. 6 fists that will prepare point blank AoEs will start spawning in sets of 3. They will always spawn in triangle formations, and you need to see which pattern spawns first for the upcoming dodge. The westmost stack and nothing will head northwest, and the eastmost will head northeast. The outer 2 spreads will hang out towards west and east, and the middle spreads will go southwest and southeast. The boss will now cast Planescracker. This is a multi-hit AoE that starts point blank in the middle and then grows outward with each iteration, covering the entirety of the arena in total. To dodge this combo, the players will hang out in their spots at the wall and dodge the first Planescracker. After that, get ready for a second one and the fists exploding at the same time. Dodge into the fists explosion, then inwards after the Planescracker. The debuffs will resolve and you can start hitting the boss. Omega will start casting Hello World. This mechanic has a lot of moving parts, but it is deceptively easy to execute, yet requires a fair bit of explanation. There are a lot of debuffs, and these will have various durations and will only be active one pair at a time, so bear with me. Every player will receive 2 tether debuffs. These will be Remote Code Smell, a debuff that will spawn a blue tether between you and your partner, and after its duration has to be snapped by the 2 connected players moving far enough apart. The other is called Local Code Smell. This is a green tether that breaks in a similar fashion, but by moving close enough together instead. Every player will also receive a Latent Synchronization Bug debuff. 2 players will start with Critical Synchronization Bug, an AoE that needs to be shared by a player with Latent Synchronization Bug. This debuff will pass to the player sharing, and I will refer to this as a stack. 2 other players will start with Critical Overflow Bug. This is a massive AoE that spreads to any other player struck by it, and I will refer to this as Defamation. 2 players will receive Latent Defect. This debuff will kill you unless you are struck by Critical Overflow Bug. And finally, the players carrying Critical Overflow Bug will receive either Critical Performance Bug, I'll call this blue, or Critical Underflow Bug, I'll call this red. The carriers of Critical Synchronization Bug will receive the ones that the former did not. These 2 debuffs will pass on contact. They will also explode at the end of their durations and will kill the carrier as well as anyone else around them if certain conditions aren't met. This might seem like a rat's nest of debuffs, but it's actually really simple. First, spot which color has Defamation. For this example, I will use blue. If the colors are swapped, you do the mechanic the exact same way, but with the colors swapped. Since we want to avoid touching each other unless we're passing a debuff, make sure you don't collide with other players when you move around. We ensure this by making Defamations move further outside the boss's hitbox than the stacks. When all debuffs have been applied, 2 red puddles and 2 blue puddles will spawn. These need to be soaked by a player with rots of corresponding color. Soaking the puddle without the corresponding rot will wipe the raid. Whenever you resolve a mechanic, you will receive a debuff preventing you from picking that debuff up again. This becomes helpful later as you won't have to worry about running into people all the time. Blue will stand max melee from the boss inside their puddle. The first green tethers will stand outside the hitbox besides either blue puddle and get ready to pick up Defamation. Red will go to their puddles and sit on the inner edge to face each other. The first blue tethers will get ready to stack with 1 each outside the puddles. Omega will cast Latent Defect to trigger the puddles and stacks. You will see this casting between each set as you're moving around the arena. The players soaking the towers will give them a debuff of the same color which will neutralize the deadly effect of the exploding red or blue debuff. The blue tethers will then grab the red debuff from the player they stacked with and snap their tether on their way out. The green tethers will grab the blue debuff from the player that gave them Defamation, and then move together to snap the green tether. This ends the first set of the Puddle Soaker debuffs exploding and cleansing the color debuff. This AoE is lethal to every other player, so stay spread out. Now the Defamation will become a blue tether, the blue tether will be a stack, the stack will be a green tether, and the green tether will be a Defamation. This will cycle 3 more times, so that every player does every mechanic once. Keep in mind that Omega will auto-attack between the casts, so keep an eye on the tank and make sure to mitigate each set appropriately. For the final latent defect, everyone will be immune to any other debuff, so we will snap green first by simply having them at the blue tether. The blue tethers will now snap theirs, and we will just let the blue and red debuffs disappear into the void after soaking the final towers. Next up is Critical Error. This will deal raid-wide damage and apply the Deformation debuff to any player without their immunity. Omega will auto a few more times before casting Oversampled Wave Cannon, which we will do another conga lineup for, but vertically this time, between the 4 and 3 markers. Omega will reach their arms out either east or west with blue monitors appearing, as well as giving 3 random players similar monitors. The player and boss monitors will fire small AoEs on 2 players on one side of them and apply Twice Come Ruin. This means you cannot be hit more than once. If a player fails to soak an AoE on the monitor's active side, it will instead target a completely random player. To solve this, the first monitor in the line will go to the northern marker on the safe side, and align their monitor to the west if Omega's monitor is east and vice versa. The second monitor will go to the northern marker on the dangerous side and face their monitor north. The third monitor will go to the southern marker on the dangerous side and face it south. The first player without a monitor will go north on the safe side. 2 and 3 will go west if west is safe, or east if east is safe. And finally, 4 and 5 will go south. The monitors will resolve, and all that's left is killing Omega before his Enrage cast finishes. Omega will reboot and cast Wave Cannon. This will target all players for a line AoE that will fire again in the same spot after a delay, as well as targeting 2 random players for stack AoEs. Group 1 will spread out west and Group 2 will spread out east. After the spreads, both groups will run south to resolve the stacks. If there are 2 stack markers in one group, the southmost stack will adjust over to the other group and the southmost player in the other group will move over to compensate. Following the first stacks, Omega will send out Planescrackers and prepare another Wave Cannon. Dodge in for the Planescracker after the second spreads and go back south for the stacks. Omega will fire Wave Cannon a third time and release a second Planescracker. After the third stack, wait for the Planescracker before moving to the middle. Omega will enrage with blue screen. You need to have brought him down below 20% to survive. This is where you usually send your melee limit break, but if you used it in phase 1, you might have to wait until the end of the phase to use it instead.
Omega M will spawn and target the main threat for Solar Ray. This time it hits twice though, so swap or use an immunity. This is quickly followed by Run Dynamis Delta, which deals massive raid-wide damage and starts the next mechanic. The Eye will appear outside the arena at a random cardinal. This will be the new north. The Doom Roomba will appear to the relative west and final Omega to the relative east. 4 players will be selected for blue tethers and the other 4 for green tethers. One of the blue tethers will receive Hello Distant World. This will explode in an AoE when it expires, applying a stack of Quickening Dynamis and a magic vulnerability to the carrier. It will then bounce to the farthest player for the same effect, then bounce yet again to the farthest player from the previous. A second blue tether will receive Hello Near World. This will have the same effect, but instead bounce to the closest players. The blue tethers will line up from north to south, close to the Doom Roomba, with the outer pair closer together so as to not snap right away. The green tethers will line up from north to south, closer to Final Omega, far apart so as they do not snap. Each player will have either a blue or yellow fist spawn beside them. These will lock onto your target after a delay and slam into the ground. If you fail to make 2 opposite fists match each other, they will wipe the raid with lethal damage. When deciding who gets inner or outer pairings for the tethers, it is extremely advised to give healers the inner pairs always, as this will be pretty handy when it comes to topping the party for the upcoming mechanics damage. 6 other fists will have spawned at the edge of the arena with either orange clockwise spinning arrows or blue counterclockwise spinning arrows. These will lock onto the closest player and start beaming a deadly line AoE in the direction indicated by the hands. With yours and your partner's fists crashing into each other, the eye will prepare a line AoE down the middle. Resolving this mechanic can seem overbearing and deceptively complicated at first glance. However, it is relatively straightforward. To start solving this, the north and south green tethers will stand next to each other and bait their fists. If they have the same colours, the tether pair closest to the middle will swap places. On the blue side, the pair closest to the middle will adjust if necessary as well, but they will instead start off behind their respective fist partner, wait for the blue tether to snap, and then stack with their partner. After the fists have locked on, Final Omega will prepare an oversampled wave cannon, and spawn a monitor on a random blue player. Omega M will then spawn in the middle of the arena, and soon prepare Beyond Defense. The blue tether pair that did not snap yet will bait the Western Fists, and the tether pair that snapped their tether will go to the middle to bait the Beyond Defense from Omega M. The inner green tether pair will bait the North and South Fists respectively, and the outer pair will bait the Eastern ones. The player getting hit by the Beyond Defense will move aside on the safe half of the arena to not get hit by the oversampled wave cannon or the pile pitch stack. The green tether pairings will adjust to prepare for the monitor hits. The remaining players that had the blue tether will stack together in the middle on the safe side. And finally, the monitor player will aim theirs towards the green tether players that are not being targeted by Final Omega. The monitors will now have resolved, and the Doom Roomba will start charging up a cleave that will cover more than half of the arena. You can see which side he will cleave by spotting the shining lights on either side of him. The players who had blue tethers but neither of the Hello World debuffs will stack together at the wall south of the eastern intercardinal marker. The blue player with a Hello Distant World will stand at the wall by the middle marker. The blue player with Hello Near World will stand as close to the middle as possible by the middle marker. The green tether pair that baited the north and south fists will snap their tether as soon as the Twice Come Ruin debuff has expired on all players. Then stand north and south of the western intercardinal marker. The green tether pair that baited the eastern fists will stretch their tether from east to west. The player that is in the safe zone already will have anchored on the east side, and the other player will rotate to the west side and sit under the Doom Roomba. With the Hello World debuffs resolved, and assuming you have done everything correctly, you will have 6 players with 1 stack of Quickening Dynamis each. Waiting for everyone's magic vulnerability to expire before breaking this final green tether is necessary here. Omega M will appear in the center of the arena and prepare another solar ray. After the Tank Buster, Omega M will cast Run Dynamis Sigma, which, much like Delta, deals massive raid-wide damage and starts the next mechanic. Omega M will appear at a random cardinal or intercardinal. This will be the new north. 2 fists will spawn towards the southwestern and southeastern intercardinals, and these 2 will later tether to the 2 furthest players and blast them with a line AoE that applies a magic vulnerability. The players will be tethered together again with everyone's favourite mechanic, Mid-Glitch or Far-Glitch, once more. Line up beside your partner at Omega M from north to south in the order cross, square, circle, triangle, or BPOG. A random player will also receive Hello Distant World, and another random player Hello Near World. Final Omega will appear in the middle and select 6 players for cone AoEs that also apply vulnerabilities. The first pair, where both have a marker, will have the west player go north and the east player go south. The second pair, where both have a marker, will have the west player go west and the east player go east. The first pair, where only one player has a marker, will have the unmarked player go northwest and the marked player go southeast. The second pair, where only one player has a marker, will have the unmarked player go northeast and the marked player go southwest. It is important to note here that there cannot be a pair where no player has a marker. Omega will then appear briefly and apply Looper to every player. Remember the waymark you end up at when the wave cannons resolve. If you have Far Glitch, you will be at the wall by your marker. If it is Mid Glitch, you will be on the ring just inside your marker. I will explain the next part of this mechanic as True North for simplicity, but the patterns can be rotated in any orientation. Omega F will appear and prepare a knockback with some towers that need to be soaked. If you have Far Glitch, there will be a tower north that needs the players from waymark 1 and 2, a tower on east that will need the player from D, a tower southeast that needs the players from 4 and C, a tower southwest that needs the players from B and 3, and finally a tower west that requires the player from A. If you have Mid Glitch, there will be a tower northwest that needs the player from 1, a tower northeast that needs the player from 2, a tower southeast that needs the players from D and 4, a tower east of south that needs the player from C, a tower west of south that needs the player from B, and finally a tower southwest that requires the players from A and 3. Find your tower and let the knockback carry you into them. Remember to go to the wall if it's far, or stay in the center of the tower if it's mid. The players at each waymark will execute the mechanic the same way, no matter how the patterns are rotated. For the final part of the mechanic, Omega F will appear at a random cardinal or intercardinal with either blade legs or a staff. This will be the new north. A line AoE indicating to rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise will spawn in the center, and 2 new tethered fists will spawn southwest and southeast relative of the female. To solve this mechanic, 3 players with 1 stack of Quickening Dynamis, but not a Hello World debuff, will go north. The rest will go south. For this strategy, it is standard to mark the 3 people going north with 1 bind, 1, and 2 bind. The Hello Distant World with cross, and Hello Near World with triangle, and the final 3 players with 2, 3, and 9 AoE starts spinning, you will either have to stay put if Omega F has a staff, or chase the AoE if she has blade legs. When you've dodged both, bind number 1 will run to the other intercardinal, and bind number 2 will plant at the starting intercardinal. Make sure you don't run into the oncoming laser AoE as bind number 2. Number 1 simply plants north here. On the south side, 4 will plant south, and Hello Distant World will stay south on the 3rd ring from the middle. Any future reference of the rings in these mechanics does not include the circle in the center as part of the count. The Hello Near World will continue in the direction that the AoE rotates and stand on the 3rd ring as well at whichever cardinal the AoE rotates to. 2 and 3 will simply continue as well along the wall, with 2 ending up slightly further than 3. The fists and the Hello World debuffs will resolve and the mechanic is complete. Omega F will spawn in the middle and prepare another solar ray. Deal with this as you had before. Omega F will then cast Run Dynamis Omega, and this, just like its predecessors, will deal massive raid-wide damage and lead into the next mechanic. This particular Dynamis trio is the most visually cluttered of the 3, so let's break it down and keep calm. This time around you will have full uptime of the boss during the first part, so keeping the tank alive and giving them cooldowns is necessary. One player will get Hello Near World and first in line, another player will get Hello Distant World and first in line, another player will get Hello Near World and second in line, and lastly another player will get Hello Distant World with second in line. Omega F and Omega M will appear on opposite intercardinals with any of their 2 configurations from P2 and prepare those attacks. Final Omega will also spawn in the center of the arena and prepare 2 massive cleaves, with narrow safe zones on 2 opposite cardinals. The visual cue for this is the giant ring on his model that will be on his front, on back, or his sides. These cleaves will repeat a second time 90 degrees right after the first one. As these attacks are winding up, 2 clones of random configurations will appear on the other 2 intercardinals and prepare their own attacks. You need to get into position and find the second safe spot, then haul ass over there as soon as the first AoEs resolve. Sprint is highly recommended here as some of the patterns are very tight. A thing worth noting is that both of the female's AoEs are the same width as the first ring in the center, so you can use that to eyeball her attacks. There are 4 combinations possible. Female staff and male sword. This is an out-out and is dodged far out on the male's side as per LPDU standard. Female staff and male shield. This is in the sides and is dodged by the male. Female blades and male shield. This is an in-in and is dodged right under Final Omega on the male's side. And finally, female blades and male sword. This is under female and is dodged under Final Omega on the female's side. Once you have dodged all the AoEs, Omega F will disappear and final Omega will prepare to cleave either east or west with an oversampled wave cannon. This needs to be soaked by 2 players carrying 2 stacks of Quickening Dynamis. If there are players with 2 stacks that are also having second in line, they need to have priority in order to resolve the mechanic. Players with first in line cannot take this mechanic. It is standard for this strategy to mark these 2 players as Bind 1 and Bind 2. The Hello Distant World with first in line will go on the safe side and go either north or south on the 3rd ring from the middle. The Hello Near World with first in line will go on the 3rd ring at the safe cardinal east or west. The remaining 4 players should be marked 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1 will go to the northern wall on the safe side, 2 will go to the safe wall slightly north, and 3 will go to the safe wall slightly south, and 4 will go to the south wall on the safe side. Oversampled Wave Cannon and the first Hello World debuffs will resolve. The Doom Roomba will appear at a random cardinal and throw out 2 tethers from Phase 1. If we assume that Omega acts as the New West, we can reuse the exact same positions for this mechanic. The 2 people with 3 stacks of Quickening Dynamis will take 1 tether each and move to the western wall in line with the intercardinal waymarks. The remaining Hello Distant World will go south or north on the 3rd ring from the middle, and the remaining Hello Near World will go to the east on the 3rd ring from the middle. And the final players will line up on the wall from north to south exactly like before. When the final debuffs have resolved, everyone should have 3 stacks of Quickening Dynamis each. Omega F will appear again in the center of the arena and start casting a final solar ray. After this tank buster, you will have a brief moment to bring her below 20% HP before she starts casting Blind Faith. This will deal high raid-wide damage and knock all players into the southern wall. Assuming you haven't completely sogged up the damage and have brought her below 20% HP, a cutscene will play, and you're off to Phase 6.
Omega will appear in the center and prepare Cosmo Memory, a raid wide that requires a tank limit break 3 and at least 15% mitigation to survive. Make sure to move out of the wall immediately. Using a limit break will convert all stacks of 3 Quickening Dynamis into Brilliant Dynamis, having the buff reduce all incoming damage and lets you refill the limit break bars if you burn another limit break 3. Should you cast limit break again and exhaust the buff, it will convert into Spark of Dynamis, which will retain the damage reduction, but that's it. Dying in this phase will strip you of either buff. The boss will follow up with 2 auto attacks. It targets both the main threat and the player furthest away, so keep the off tank outside the hitbox with the party and main tank inside. The autos do apply vulnerabilities, so make sure they don't go on the same target. To make this easier, just have the off tank keep their stance off. Omega will now cast Cosmo Arrow, which will spawn AoEs covering the outside of the arena as well as AoEs forming a cross through the center. Both of these AoEs will expand outwards in each iteration, and rather than breaking down where any given AoE will appear at any given time, I'm just going to run you through how to dodge them. If the outer AoE spawns first, dodge out, wait for 2 AoEs, dodge in, dodge to the side along the hitbox, and finally, dodge in again. If the inner AoE spawns first, you will dodge in. Wait for 2 AoEs, dodge out, wait another 2, then dodge to the side along the hitbox, and finally dodge in again. While Cosmo Arrow is resolving, Omega will ready Cosmo Dive. This will select the 2 closest targets for AoE tank busters and the furthest target for a party stack. After the dodge, the main tank will steer left and the off tank will go right. Try to stay relatively far in not to nuke the rest of the party. Next up is 2 auto attacks followed by unlimited wave cannon. AoEs that will progressively cross the arena will start spawning along the edge, one after another. Every player will also be selected for large AoE puddles 6 times. Simply stack in the middle and spot the first AoE. When the puddle starts spawning, dodge to the cardinal or intercardinal beside the first moving AoE and dodge in the same direction they spawned. Unlimited Wave Cannon is quickly followed by Wave Cannon. This is a cast that will fire line AoEs and apply magic vulnerability on all players during the cast. These AoEs are split into 2 sets of 4, so go to your spread positions around the boss. The cast will finish off with a massive AoE stack that does astronomical damage to the first 2 targets. Have the tank stand in front of the party with cooldowns. In the description below is a sample mitigation plan you can use. Tweak it to your comp. Another set of auto attacks will be sent out before we get one more Cosmo Arrow. This time, however, all the dodges will have to be done according to spread spot since Omega will be sneaking in a wave cannon during the dodge. Omega will auto twice again before casting a second unlimited wave cannon. Do this just like you did before. This time, Omega will finish the mechanic with a second Cosmo Dive instead of a wave cannon. Make sure the tanks don't hit the party with their busters. After the mechanic, another 2 auto attacks will go out and both melees will burn their Dynamis limit breaks. Omega will now cast Cosmo Meteor. Everyone should make it to the middle under the boss. The mechanic will start by every player getting selected for a massive AoE puddle. Dodge this by stepping out into spread positions. Small note here is the range player will be taking the north position and the main tank will be moving to the range player's position. A bunch of small meteor adds as well as 2 large meteor adds north and south will spawn. The smaller ones will fall quicker so the caster will burn their Dynamis limit break. While the sky is falling, each player will get hit by AoEs that apply magic vulnerabilities. The AoEs are slightly staggered in 2 sets of 4. This will happen another time before the mechanic is over, but the healers have a brief moment to top off the party before it does. The range player will burn their Dynamis to finish off the big meteors. Omega will select 3 random players for flares. These will deal significantly more damage than in P2. Have everyone that isn't a flare join the range player north while the flares spread out on the other cardinals. If the range player is a flare, everyone instead goes south, since they are still locked in the limit break. If you make it through safely, Omega will prepare Magic Number, a raid-wide that requires a tank limit break to live. It will leave a Doom-type debuff on every player that requires Healer Limit Break 3 to cleanse, so let it rip as soon as you see the debuff. This will repeat one more time where the other tank and other healer will burn their Dynamis. You will be left with one last Limit Break 3 to send into the boss that the melee can use. And in the words of the Wise Tree, fucking nuke it, boys. Play safe and go for the clear.
I know this place!
I guarantee you we don't play.
What happened to your asshole? Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, guys, your concern for my pussy is very, very heartwarming, okay? It's shit.